Vowing to retaliate, Saudi Arabia promising a strong response if the United States levies sanctions over the suspected killing of missing columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Joining us now is Ron Paul, former Texas congressman and host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Sir, thank you for joining us. This is a mess. What do you think the right response from the U.S. is?
Well, I think the response should have been done weeks or months ago, because I want a separation, and I don't want to be a close ally with Saudi Arabia, but that's mainly military, because I disapprove of that war in Yemen so much. But there's been a murder occurred between factions, I think, in Saudi Arabia. And quite frankly, I don't think we should respond to that. I mean, people don't, if something like that happened in the United States, we don't have various countries come around here and get involved and threaten sanctions. So I think what we should do is the proper policy, and that is not be an accomplice in the war in Yemen and somebody else in the internal people in Saudi Arabia, because it looks like somebody in Saudi Arabia killed somebody, another person, and there's a lot of controversy there, and there may be a power struggle there. But I don't think we should respond and saying, well, we're going to punish you because we are all knowing and we know exactly who did what and why. So I am.
But what if he was a legal resident of the United States at the time? I mean, that's one of the things that people are parsing, that at the time, he was here, he was working as a columnist, he left and went to Turkey, and that's the point at which he was abducted and potentially murdered.
I think it'd be a lot more to that argument if the incident occurred here. But a legal resident, I'm not so sure that means, our police forces travel with every individual like this, no matter where they go around the world. Questions could be asked, but it's not the responsibility for us to go and throw our weight around and impose penalties and stir up a lot more problems when we're not the investigators. We don't have the authority to investigate. So I would say no, that we shouldn't accelerate this. But if it happened here in this country, that'd be a little bit different.
Yeah. We watched the market go down even further today as these reports came out, and the market was pretty much already on tenterhooks after hitting recently all new highs. Now we seem to be in a different trend. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the correction and the big bust is on its way. The correction is there. I think people have been seeing signs of this for a good many months, and you can't have 10 years of inflation, that is the monetary inflation, and have an artificially low interest rates, which essentially were zero, and not expect distortions and excessive debt and malinvestment and bubbles. You can't do it. It's
so you think it's an equity bubble, or you think that there's bigger problems in the economy?
Well, I think it's more the equity and where the money went. The economy, the initial stages of a monetary inflation is there are economic activities that people construe as beneficial, but that's a deception. That happened during the 20s. There were economic statistics that reassured people, but there were still distortions because there had been monetary inflation. So there's the great distortion, but the biggest thing is for years, even when Greenspan was there or as he was leaving, people said he kept interest rates too low, too long, so we lowered them even further, which causes all the distortions and malinvestment and, worst of all, the debt. And this is what we're facing. There's so much debt out there, and the worst debt is the government. The amount of money that we owe is just unsustainable, and this has to be resolved because of the distortion. You just can't say, well, it looks like the economy might be weaker now that the stock market went down. Oh, okay, let's print more money. Yeah. I mean, it makes no sense at all. We distort the most important signal in the economy, and that is market rates of interest, to tell people what to do, when to save, when to spend, when to invest, and yet we have not had that signal. And
yes,
it looks a lot of people have benefited by it, but
absolutely,
it has to be paid for.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.